The Boondocks stopped being about the kids. It stopped being about Huey. It stopped being about Riley. It stopped being about a lot of these people, right? A lot of these younger guys. It definitely wasn't about Jasmine, right? But the Boondocks was kind of originally a lot about the children, right? A big part of the Boondocks were these kids, right? And a lot of the original concept that Aaron came up with was very much framed around these children. I think I brought this up in a video, right? But, you know, originally, like Robert Freeman, you know, Uncle Ruckus, all these adult characters, Tom Dubois, Sarah Dubois, they weren't on the website, right? They just weren't on that original website. It was never, this series conceptually wasn't really supposed to be about the adults, and it slowly kind of transitioned into that. And there's a few reasons I think that is. I think there's a few key reasons for that. But I think one of the things that interests me the most is how the Boondocks transitioned into that.
This video is sponsored by Skillshare. I wouldn't be making anything if I wasn't inspired by the Boondocks at such a young age. It genuinely made me believe that I could do anything. If such a self-indulgent show could exist, maybe I could make something like that. Everybody knows I've been working on my indie video game, and a lot of that process is going online and searching up tutorials on game dev, game feel, and Unity. And it can be really overwhelming sometimes, genuinely. Thankfully, Skillshare has the largest online learning community for creatives. So if I want clear, focused, and professional tutorials on game design, I can actually use Skillshare. And there's thousands of classes from game development, UI design, graphic design, and if you can think of it, Skillshare probably has it. In fact, if you want me to be as real as can be, I'm trying to get back into drawing. I used to do it all the time and I just stopped. There's this great beginner's course about gestures that I really recommend you check out. And again, that's just a fragment of what you can do. Film, animation, it's all there. It's genuinely a space for creatives of any kind to develop their skills through other creatives and industry experts. And guess what? The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today and do your thing.
One of the big ones is the Boondocks began to parody more things and tackle a more adult subject matter. And I think as a result, it's easier to use older characters to tackle those things, because some things are, to be blunt, inappropriate for children, right? But one could argue that a big part of the Boondocks was younger children being exposed to inappropriate things, right? And trying to grapple in a world that is wholly unethical and inappropriate for them. One of my favorite episodes of the Boondocks is the Red Ball. And the reason the Red Ball is one of my favorites is because I feel like it says so much with its concept. On a surface level, it's just this anime kickball episode. It's just, oh man, look at the cool fight scenes. Listen to the music. It's really good, right? On a surface level, I think it's great. It's one of the best examples of the point I'm trying to make here, right? Because it's really just, we're just gonna get some kids and they're gonna play kickball and it's gonna look cool. And a bunch of people love the episode as a result. People love and gravitate towards these younger characters, for better or worse, whatever, right? They love them. Maybe it's because they see themselves through them, they see their youth through them, what have you. But people love seeing younger characters on TV or just in the media, whatever, right? The Red Ball is about the relationship between the US and China, right? It's about imperialism. It's about, the military, how they are fed patriotism, right? Or the people generally are fed patriotism in terms of, you gotta fight for our country, and even if you don't like our country, do you want to end up like them? They're pretty bad, right? And so you get this piece about propaganda. You get this piece about what it means to stand in the quote-unquote military, or what it means to fight for your country, and how that is sold to you, either reluctantly or, by one's own volition, right? How that is manifested. How we demonize others, how our ignorance to the way in which the world works outside maybe the US or the Western world affects our perception of others. It's a really, this episode's really cool. It's a really cool episode, especially the more you look into it, right? Especially that dynamic between that kind of impending war between the US and China. Really fascinating episode, right? And you only get to do that because you're using the kids, right? And there's this layer underneath all of it, right? And it's really clever as a result. Another episode that comes to mind, the fundraiser, right? The fundraiser is about selling drugs, right? Instead, they use candy. It's creative and it's silly. You get to use this younger cast, etc., etc. But it's still obviously still inappropriate. It's still, raunchy. It's still vulgar. It's still the Boondocks, right? And so obviously it takes a lot more creativity to come up with these concepts for the kids that are like these allegories for real life things, right? It's easier to just take the adult character and just put them in the scenario and there you go, right? So I can understand both from a parody perspective and from from many perspectives why you wouldn't fixate on the kids, right? Also, the kids also don't maybe have as much longevity, right? Just in terms of, okay, like casting, right? Obviously Regina King, you know, she can voice Huey and Riley and whatever, right? But say Jasmine, like Gabby Soleil had to be replaced in season 4, and she was probably going to be replaced in the reboot, if you want to be honest, right? There's less longevity with the kids. It's easier to maybe miss the messaging with the kids, right? Like I imagine a lot of people didn't even know the Red Bull was about that, right? Like, do you know what I mean? But I think the show is a lot more clever as a result. 1 and 2, again, people gravitate towards these kids. And so this isn't me trying to disparage, you know, these episodes with the adult characters. Some of my favorites are that, again, Gangsterless is a really interesting episode, right? I think that episode is interesting in what it says about Riley. Gangsterless is interesting in his impact and influence on youth and young people. That's what makes him interesting to me. It's not, and you know, we could talk about the commentary on homosexuality, hyper masculinity, and how that's kind of, depending on your perspective, a bit homoerotic. But like, you know, it's such a big fundamental part of, you know, this, I was gonna say franchise, but it's this series, right? And it feels like an element that's kind of been stripped away slowly with time, and that's kind of disheartening, you know? I want to stress, this isn't me saying, if we could just have like a whole show with just Huey, Riley, Caesar, Ice, and this kind of feeds into like the whole like, oh, why isn't Michael Caesar in the show, right, and all this stuff, right? A big element, in my opinion, is just that they started using the older characters more. Even when I look at like the Boondocks reboot concept art, right, I'm seeing all these older characters, and yeah, there's some young characters, but for the most part, it's the older characters, right? And I get it, I understand it, but I can't help but feel like something is lost in the process, you know? Obviously art grows, it evolves, it does what it needs to do. You know, it grows with the times, but there is something really magical, there's something really beautiful, in my opinion, about an episode like A Huey Freeman Christmas, right? And how you can tell a story about black projects being co-opted and executive meddling with a young character like Huey in the school, right? That you can tell an interesting story about cultural appropriation with Riley and his graffiti. Obviously, I love this show, I love a lot of the episodes, but it is something that did stick out to me, right? And it's always stuck out to me. And I guess with this like casual video, I kind of wanted to kind of platform it, you know, kind of, I guess with this, I kind of wanted to get a sense for people's perspectives. Is this something that people have noticed? Is this something that people like would have liked to see more of, right? Is it a situation where, and I'm probably going to put our poll in relation to this video, but do you feel like the Boondocks needed more balance in relation to the younger characters and the older characters? Do you feel like the older characters probably should have, you know, paved the way more? This is where I see a lot of people also say like, oh yeah, and this is why they should age up the characters if they want to do that. But it's like, to me, that fundamentally, and I'm sure Aaron feels this way, it kind of, you know, it gets in the way of one of those fundamental points where it's like, it's about how the media and the wider world around us has an effect on young people, right? Riley is a commentary and a satire on contemporary commercial black culture, I'll say, right? And what is fed throughout the media, right? Huey is, I'm not going to use the term satire, but Huey is a consolidation of the political era of hip-hop and black political movements, right? You know, you can even talk to like, okay, let's say Rollo Goodlove, right, with the hunger strike, right, and how he effectively represents this kind of co-opting of those movements, and how Huey looked up to him as like, oh, he's like a leader, like he's someone that you know, we can gravitate towards and we can latch onto, and he's so inspiring, right? And you see in real time like his disillusionment. You get to see him be let down by this person he held up. And so it's it's in having this stuff. Even Jasmine with the lemonade stand, that's just a commentary. Obviously it's like do the right thing, but it's also like a commentary on capitalism, right? And so I bring up all of these things, I talk about these things because I just think it's a shame that some of that went to the wayside. Yes, obviously the more direct, overt commentary it's easier to latch onto, it's easier to understand, and you know, not everything you can do with kids. But the degree of creativity that it does take to do those things, to me, is what's interesting, right? To me, it's the creativity in using those childlike characters and commenting on, again, like, and the idea, to me, from what I've read of what Aaron had to say about this series conceptually on his website and this, that, and the third, right? It was always kind of about, again, my interpretation, what's it called? Older people watching this show, and obviously the younger people see the young characters and they just like latch onto them. Like, oh, I'm Huey, oh, I'm Jasmine, I'm Riley, whatever, right? But the older people watching the show can have actually do some reflection and go, hey, what kind of world are we creating for young people? You know what I mean? What kind of effect are we having on young people, right? And you look at Aaron, someone so inspired by, and who constructed a lot of his identity around what hip hop culture was around the late 80s to the early 90s, right? And how disillusioned he was to hip hop as it grew into like more gangster rap, more gangster movies, right? To be blunt, right? And his disillusionment to that, I think there's something to be said there. Let me know if you want to see more of these. Again, I've got videos on the pipeline, but again, I had to get this out relatively quickly, so I appreciate you guys for the time. Okay, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Peace.